Hi, my name is Michelle Cleaver, and I'm doing this video for D14373CB at Georgetown College. The class I'm doing is called Communicating with Immigrants. And the family I chose for my project was from El Salvador. And this was a great experience for me because I've learned so much about this culture from the eyes of people who actually lived it. But before I get into my interview with my family, I want to tell you a little bit about El Salvador. El Salvador is the smallest country, kind of the peninsula between South Africa and Mexico. It is located on the Pacific Ocean side, and it has Honduras and Guatemala as the northern borders, and the ocean as the southern border. There's around 6 million people there. The country is mostly mountainous regions. They have down toward the ocean area, there's more of a low-lying plains. The people in the area are mostly Roman Catholic. There are some missionary work that has come in that's brought in Baptist and Mormons traditions. The second biggest religion is Protestants. The people, before the 80s, there wasn't a lot of religious following in the area due to the conflicts, the violence, the civil wars that happened. Violence is very bad, and gangs are very bad in the area, and they're more prominent around the bigger cities, but they are everywhere. The culture is similar to other Latin American countries. Eye contact is very important in this culture, and women are still considered to stay home, to be with their families, to cook and to clean. The schools are, through 9th grade, is free, and it's usually in one big area. English as a second language is taught to this area. Secondary schools are in the bigger cities, and the children that are fortunate enough to be able to go to them will receive college classes and ways to get into colleges. They do have a third-year degree that is a technical degree that if they go for the third year in these schools, they will have specialized work in a workforce area. But most people, especially the ones that I was talked to, of course, were too far away to attend, and they couldn't attend these secondary and other schools. The secondary schools are free, however, the supplies are not free. So that was another expense that they could not afford. They had to get uniforms and school supplies. A couple that I was able to talk to both members of the family, the wife, or the man and the female. So I got both perspectives of the culture. I'm going to have them named John and Marie because for privacy purposes. Marie's family came, her mom was from Honduras and her dad was from El Salvador. Her grandparents actually spoke Nahuatl. I hope I got that right. But she said she couldn't speak it, but she was able to understand when they talked to her. Some of the words were similar in the areas. John grew up in, both his parents were from El Salvador, and he grew up in the same little town that she actually grew up in. It was so funny because they both came from the same area. I asked him how long they lived in the U.S., and John said he came to the U.S. straight from El Salvador. He walked across the border, was able to cross the river, had some issues with people stole stuff from him and everything, and he was attacked and beat up for his money, but he said he did make it. He came here 7 years ago. Marie came when she was a little younger. She came actually to Kentucky 8 years ago, but she lived in Miami 10 years before that. And she said the culture in Miami was not such a shock to her because people in Miami spoke a type of Spanish. The majority of the places were all Spanish because of the Cuban influence. She said, however, in Kentucky, there was no influence, so there was hard for her to talk to people, to respond, and it was a little bit more nervous for her at first, but she's learned the language better now, so she's been more comfortable. John said he came from a lower class of family, and he lived in a home with a cardboard roof. And the roof would leak, of course, when it rained, so they had to put plastic on it. He had an aunt that lived up the road from him that was even less fortunate than he was, he said, and she had no money or nothing to take care of her family. So, and she had a small child, a small son. And so a man from San Salvador, the big city, came with a couple from the United States, or Texas, and they adopted her child right then and there from her house. There was no legal going through the courts. It was right there at her house. He said that she was told that he would get a better life in America if she would let him go, and she couldn't afford to feed him, and he was just basically going to starve if she didn't do this. So she did agree. There was no money that took place. There was no cash value change. She was just lost her son. But he did say that this son went on to be a prominent lawyer in Texas and kept ties with her through his family. His family let him keep ties with her, and he went back and took money back to her, and he sends money to her family, and he was able to buy her a new home in the area. She wanted to stay in the area, but he made it a lot easier on her, and it was nice that they were able to keep up the connection. The school in the area, Marie said that she was walked to and from school every day by a family member, somebody in the family, an adult. And I was asking why would this happen, and she said that the gangs are so bad in the area that a family member would walk her to school, sit outside with other adults, watch the school, and when school was out, they would walk them home. Because if they didn't, the gang members would come in and get the females and take them for prostitution, rape them, kill them. Or the boys would be taken to other cities for gang related. They would be on drugs, and they'd get them on gangs. So it was very sad to hear this. But she said that in the school there were, through the 9th grade, and all the children were in one classroom, and there were 3 chalkboards on 3 different walls, and the chalkboard, the teacher there's only one teacher for like 50-some kids, and she would put marks down the board to split it into 3 sections and have the 3 different grades that are looking toward that board, and then the same way for the other 3 boards. But she would go from area to area to teach those grades. Now, that was just overwhelming to know that they had to do this, but she said neither one of them went on any farther in school. John and Marie both quit at 9th grade to start work. Marie said that she was from a more middle-class family, but she wanted money to work. So she babysat, she took care of the elderly in the area, and John said he worked in the coffee plantations nearby, because that's what surrounded their city, was coffee plantations. So he worked in the coffee plantations all day. They were also told me about how they wanted a better life for their children. I asked them, were there any typical taboos type things that they didn't see in the U.S. that was big there? And they both laughed, and they said it was acceptable to marry a female to marry at 13, and she can marry a man as old as 40 or 50. And as long as the parents would say okay, and they usually did, because he would provide for them and they wouldn't have to anymore. They also said that there were no police per se in the area due to the gangs. They were kind of never around. And she said, Marie laughed and said that there was one big difference that she noticed, that when she was growing up, it was acceptable for a woman to be slapped in public, to be by her boyfriend, husband type, her other just a spouse or a significant other, and it was acceptable. If he would smack her in the public and beat her if she said something he didn't like. And she said that the more that they would hit on them, they felt like that they were loved more. So she laughed. She said that was a funny thing because her mom was abused a lot, and she didn't realize it. She thought it was okay to do that until they came to America and they realized that this is not okay. So that was something that was really different and eye-opening for her. She said that for fun, or he said also, John and her both said that they would play in the local river nearby. They would play soccer. Soccer was a big thing for them. There was one ball in the community, and so the boys would go out and play soccer. And Marie said that she would like climb trees and play around the river. And they would always play close to home because, again, of the games. They would go as a group. So it's a very enlightening interview that I had with them. And they were and I asked them, I said, what could we as teachers help you with? And she said that she wished that our schools had more interpreters, bilingual people, because it was very frustrating for the paperwork that they get that is not in their native language. And I told her, I said, I'd have to agree with that. Our school system in this area is very, very behind in that, I should say. And it's not just this culture, it's other cultures from other people that it's hard for them to come and be in our area. So as a teacher and hearing what they've said, some ideas that I would stress to teachers to do is, the main one is a home visit, to actually make a personal connection with these people and to see where they come from. I mean, the interview that I did, I learned so much about the family and what they want and where they came from, and what they have overcome to be able to come to this country and get an education for their children. Learn about the culture. Learn about all the cultures in your class. I mean, you might have Chinese, Iraqi. You have different cultures. Learn about them, because even though eye contact is very important in my family's culture, it may not be in another culture. They may not want to have eye contact. That's not something you do with them, but you need to know these things as a teacher to make the parents feel welcome and the families. Integrate cultural traditions into the classroom, and provide ways that the kids can do have their background knowledge brought into the class, because that's a big thing with ELL students. Background knowledge helps them build on their culture and build on their language skills. Encourage native language at home with the families. Tell them it's okay to speak their native language, because they will acquire both languages. And provide maybe a school-wide cultural activities for them, activities for the cultures. And in the classroom, provide hands-on experiences for the kids so they can understand and do the experiments. Use visuals. Visuals are very important with ELL children to learn. Modeling and demonstrating. Pre-teach vocabulary words. Academic vocabulary is very strong, and we need to pre-teach it to them and use the background knowledge to help with this. Teach them how to pick out and do a KWL chart with them, to what they know, what we need to know, and what we learned. So it'll help them build on this knowledge, and they can use it in future. They can have this background knowledge for the future. Peer tutoring is good. Have an English child speak with them and sit with them and work with them. Have these children feel like they're part of the classroom. That is a big thing. and have the families feel like they're part of the classroom. So thank you for listening to my interview, and thank you for listening to my video.